Thanks, Dr. Rajasekaran, for the introduction. Thank you, guys, for having me speak. It really is an honor. It's been great to be part of the meeting and some very engaging discussion over the past couple of days. As Dr. Rajasekaran said, this is truly not a U.S. perspective, but I think more of a spine surgeon's perspective on spinopelvic association and instability and total hip arthroplasty. So, I'm going to start with this. This is one of those common perception things, and I'm sure if the people in the audience are looking at this, some of you see a rabbit and others see a duck, and maybe the really wise amongst you see both. And I think the same principle applies to this x-ray, right? So some of us, or at least the spine surgeons in the audience looking at this, would see a lateral maybe of the lumbar spine. You're looking at lordosis, disc degeneration, et cetera. And to a hip surgeon, you're looking at a lateral view of the pelvis. And I would submit to you at the end of the day that it's really the same thing. And I think the key concept that I want to impart really with the talk is that it's important to think of the pelvis as the caudal vertebrae of the spine, because that's really how it works. It's the link between the lower extremities and the spine, and is a very powerful regulator of alignment because of that role. And I think for some of you, I'm going to sort of pose this as an existential question. Is hip replacement really a spine surgery? Because I think as we go through the role of the pelvis in alignment, there's a case to be made potentially for that. And I think we're going to talk about the pelvic parameters, and these are the ones that are most commonly utilized in spine surgery. And my goal, hopefully, through this talk is to make these a little bit more intuitive, because they can be a little bit difficult to sort through. So 3 big ones you should know: pelvic incidence, pelvic tilt, and sacral slope. Start by talking about pelvic incidence. This is defined as the angle between the perpendicular line across the midpoint of the sacrum and a line connecting that to the femoral head. And it's defined really by the orientation of the sacrum within the pelvis. So that's really what it's describing. So a low pelvic incidence is a sacrum that sits very vertically within the pelvis. And as some patients, because there's a wide variation in the orientation of the sacrum within the pelvis, if you have a more horizontal sacrum, you will have a high pelvic incidence. It's an important parameter for us because it's morphological, so it doesn't change. It changes as you grow up, but once you reach skeletal maturity, it's fixed. So as the patient is standing, semi-recumbent or sitting, it doesn't really change the pelvic incidence. There's a wide variation, as we noted before, with ranges from 30 to 80 degrees. So the next up is sacral slope. So when we think about sacral slope, this is really the angle between the horizontal and the upper sacral end plate. Unlike pelvic incidence, this is a positional parameter, so it's very affected by patient position or compensation due to spinal alignment. So as you go from standing like this to sitting down, the sacral slope decreases. And it correlates with pelvic incidence. So patients with a small pelvic incidence tend to have a small sacral slope. Patients with a large pelvic incidence tend to have a large sacral slope. Pelvic tilt, and I think this is really when the rubber starts to meet the road as we start to think about this hip-spine connection and alignment. So this is defined as the angle between the vertical line and the line joining the femoral heads to the midpoint of the sacrum. And it defines the rotation, essentially, of the pelvis and acetabulum. It is a very powerful compensatory mechanism, and it is affected by patient position. So as you move, or as you retrovert, for example, to compensate for spinal malalignment, or go from a sitting to standing position, it changes. And as with pelvic incidence, there's a wide range from low to high pelvic tilt. And I think if you look at this, one of the key things from this slide is that pelvic tilt as a relative contributor to your overall alignment versus sacral slope. Patients with very high pelvic incidence tend to have a very high pelvic tilt, and patients with a very low pelvic tilt tend to have a very low pelvic incidence, patients with a very low pelvic incidence, tend to have a very low pelvic tilt. This group, I think, is of special relevance to arthroplasty surgeons because this is that challenging group. When you start with a low pelvic tilt, you have a relatively vertical sacrum to begin with, and you don't have that much give or that much room to turn it even more vertical. Your sacral slope cannot physically get less than 0. And so that limits them in a couple of important ways. For the spine surgeon, it means there's less ability to retrovert, and so your alignment targets, the wiggle room you have is a lot less. For the hip surgeon, it probably means that the lower sacral slope means you can't reduce it as much when you go from sitting to standing. So these are the patients, as Dr. Rajasekaran will touch on, they get kind of in that stuck position. And to kind of drive this concept home, if the spine and the sacrum were straight, this would be a moot point. We would be thinking about this maybe more like knee arthroplasty, where we're thinking about everything in a 90-90 terms. Unfortunately, because as we saw, there's a wide variation of the sacrum within the pelvis, that's not the case. So in a patient with low pelvic incidence, your spine, if it was straight, you'd end up like this. Now you can compensate for it by retroverting, so you could get back that way, or you can have an alignment, which is what we do physiologically in the lumbar and thoracic spine, to kind of bring your spine back over the pelvis. In a high pelvic incidence patient, again, you'd be off all the way that way. You can compensate by retroverting, and again, note how much more room they have with retroversion just by nature of their starting pelvic orientation. Or in the physiologic state, you have higher curvature, so you have higher lordosis, higher thoracic kyphosis, etc. And this video sort of drives that concept home. What the goal of pelvic tilt is really to bring the whole spine back into this conus of economy. Because it's so low, it's a very powerful lever arm to bring your head back over the rest of your, back over your pelvis and your ankles. And functionally, for a spine surgeon, what that means is a patient that's standing upright in clinic like this, if you remove pelvic tilt as a compensatory mechanism, they would actually be standing sort of in this position. A couple of quick cases, I think, to sort of drive home the relevance of this concept. So this is a 43-year-old guy with ankylosing spondylitis. You can see is compensating significantly through the pelvis. You plan a correction, you kind of think about all this stuff, you execute the correction and you think everything goes well, and you can kind of see what changes he has to his hip. So this is his hip preoperatively, and postoperatively the same hip. You can see how retroverted it becomes within the pelvis as his pelvis relaxes after the correction of his spine. But every rule, I think, is only as good as its exception. So this is another case, I think, just interesting to think about and chew on maybe as we move into the panel part of the discussion. So this is a gentleman you'd think sort of similarly, a lot of pelvic tilt, flat lumbar spine. You do the hip arthroplasty, but what you see is that there's really no change in the compensation through the pelvis. Now, there may be reasons for that. That could be that he maybe has a cam deformity or something intrinsic in the hip that's keeping him from bringing his pelvis back forward. And you see this patient typically ends up compensating through the rest of their spine, which is an issue we deal with in terms of junctional issues. But that concept, I think, is important to understand. I do want to acknowledge Dr. Lafarge and Dr. Lavecchio, who kind of were instrumental in helping me put this talk together, including sharing some of their slides with me. And I think I'd leave you with this point. The pelvis really is the caudal vertebra of the spine. It is responding to spinal alignment and the need for us to stand upright. And you know, I think Dr. Berry had that point in his debate about whether we should be thinking about it. And I kind of think it's a very important consideration in terms of overall alignment. So, thank you.